The survey ship Meridian hung in the void like a steel needle against the star-scattered darkness, its hull gleaming under the pale light of a distant binary system. Inside the cramped engineering bay, Dax Corin wiped grease from his hands and stared at the diagnostic readouts with barely concealed irritation. 3 months into what was supposed to be a 2-week mineral survey, and they were still parsing data from dead rocks. Another thrilling day in paradise, he muttered, watching the atmospheric processors hum their monotonous tune. At 28, Dax had signed up for space exploration, expecting adventure, not endless maintenance cycles on forgotten moons. The comm crackled to life. Corin, report to the observation deck, came the crisp voice of Captain Helena Voss. We've got something interesting. Dax made his way through the ship's narrow corridors, passing crew members he'd grown tired of seeing every day for months. The observation deck buzzed with unusual activity. Captain Voss stood beside the main viewport, her silver hair pulled back in its customary severe bun, while Navigator Kai Chen hunched over a scanner display. What's the excitement about? Dax asked, joining them at the massive transperistal window. Below them, the moon-designated LK7 rotated slowly, its surface a patchwork of rust-colored canyons and ancient impact craters. But now, highlighted by the ship's searchlights, geometric patterns emerged from what they'd previously dismissed as natural rock formations. Structures, Voss said simply, definitely artificial. Lieutenant Torres detected them during the deep scan 3 hours ago. Beside her, Communications Officer Isabella Torres looked up from her console, dark eyes bright with curiosity. The patterns suggest a complex of some kind. Could be ruins. Could be something else. Dax felt the first spark of genuine interest he'd experienced in weeks. Any signs of life? Negative on current activity, Torres replied. But the architecture is unlike anything in our databases. We're talking seriously ancient here. Within an hour, Dax found himself suited up in the shuttle bay alongside Torres and Chief Security Officer Blake. Morrison, a mountain of a man whose perpetually serious expression had earned him the nickname, the Wall among the crew. Captain Voss had deemed the discovery significant enough to warrant immediate investigation. The shuttle descended through LK7's thin atmosphere, its engines kicking up clouds of russet dust as they approached the landing site. The structures, resolved into clearer detail through the viewport towering spires and graceful arches that seemed to flow like frozen water, all carved from the same dark stone that made up the moon's bedrock. Definitely not human, Morrison observed, his deep voice crackling through the comm. The proportions are all wrong. They landed in what appeared to be a central courtyard, empty save for the whisper of wind through alien stonework. The structures rose around them like the ribs of some massive beast, their surfaces covered in intricate carvings that seemed to shift and dance in the shuttle's lights. Breathable atmosphere, Torres announced, checking her readings. Thin, but within acceptable parameters for short-term exposure. They emerged from the shuttle into the eerie quiet of the ruins. Dax's boots crunched on what might have been gravel, or might have been the remains of something else entirely. The architecture defied easy categorization. Organic curves, married to geometric precision in ways that made his engineer's mind both appreciate and revolt. Against the impossible angles, split up to cover more ground, Morrison suggested, his hand resting casually on his sidearm. Stay in groups of 2, Torres replied, taking charge of the ground mission. Morrison, you're with me. We'll take the eastern complex. Dax, you handle the western structures. Stay in constant contact. Dax nodded and activated his helmet lights, their beams cutting through the perpetual twilight that shrouded the ruins. He picked his way carefully through fallen debris and what looked like the remains of some kind of garden, long since turned to dust and strange crystalline formations. The western complex proved to be a series of interconnected chambers, each more elaborate than the last. The walls were covered in murals depicting figures that were clearly not human tall, graceful beings with elongated limbs and faces that held an otherworldly beauty. But it was the final chamber that made him stop in his tracks. The room was circular, with a domed ceiling that somehow seemed to glow with its own inner light. At the center, on a raised dais surrounded by intricate carved symbols, stood a statue that took his breath away. She was magnificent. The figure was clearly female, standing perhaps 6 feet tall, with the same elegant proportions as the beings in the murals, but where the painted figures seemed distant and ethereal. The statue possessed an almost living presence. Her skin was a pale blue, like ice touched by moonlight, and her hair fell in luxurious red curls around her shoulders. Her face was a study in perfect symmetry: high cheekbones, full lips, and closed eyes that seemed to hold secrets. She wore what appeared to be ceremonial robes that clung to her form, and her arms were outstretched as if reaching for something or someone. "Well, hello there," Dax murmured, circling the statue slowly. The craftsmanship was incredible. He could see individual strands of hair, the delicate curve of her fingernails, even what looked like the texture of her skin. "Aren't you something special?" He activated his comm. "Torres, Morrison, you need to see this. I found something in the Western Complex." "Copy that," Torres's voice crackled back. "We're finishing up here." "What kind of something?" Dax grinned, feeling more alive than he had in months. "The kind that makes this whole boring mission worth it. Trust me, you won't believe this." As he waited for his colleagues, Dax found himself drawn back to the statue. There was something about her that seemed almost expectant, as if she were waiting for something to happen. "What were you waiting for, beautiful?" he asked the silent figure. "Some prince to come wake you up with a kiss." The words hung in the air, and Dax felt a sudden, inexplicable urge. It was ridiculous, of course. She was a statue, a relic of some long-dead civilization, but the craftsmanship was so perfect, her expression so serene and inviting. "What the hell?" he muttered, and leaned forward to press his lips gently against the statue's stone mouth. The kiss lasted only a moment, but as he pulled back, Dax could have sworn he felt warmth beneath the cool stone. He laughed at his own foolishness and activated his calm again. "Torres, Morrison, where are you? I think I just found my new girlfriend." But as the words left his mouth, something impossible happened. The statue's eyes opened. They were the color of deep amber, flecked with gold, and they were looking directly at him with an intelligence that was very much alive. Dax stumbled backward, his heart hammering against his ribs as the impossible became reality before his eyes. The statue, the woman, blinked slowly, as if awakening from a very long sleep. Her lips curved into a smile that was both knowing and infinitely tender. "Hello, my beloved," she said, her voice like music made of starlight. "I have been waiting for you." Dax's mind reeled as the impossible woman stepped gracefully down from the dais, her movements fluid as water despite having been stone moments before. The pale blue of her skin seemed to shimmer with its own inner light, and her amber eyes never left his face as she approached. "This isn't happening," he whispered, backing against the chamber wall. "Statues don't just come to life. This is some kind of hallucination from the thin atmosphere. Or, you awakened me." "With the ritual kiss," she said, her voice carrying an accent he couldn't place, musical and warm. "I am Salith, Empress of the Serati, and you." She reached out with one elegant hand to touch his face through his helmet's faceplate. "You are my destined bondmate." The comm crackled to life. "Dax, what's your status? We heard you talking to someone." Torres's voice cut through his shock. Dax stared at Salith, who was now studying him with curious intensity. "There's been a development." "What kind of development?" Morrison's gruff voice demanded. Before Dax could answer, Salith tilted her head and spoke directly toward his comm unit. "Greetings, companions of my beloved. I am pleased to finally meet those who have brought him to me." The silence that followed was deafening. Torres's voice was carefully controlled. "Please tell me you're not talking to a statue." "Well," Dax said weakly, "technically she's not a statue anymore." The sound of running footsteps echoed through the ruins as Torres and Morrison rushed toward the Western Complex. Salith smiled at the approaching sounds, then turned back to Dax with an expression of pure adoration. "Thousands of years I waited in the sacred sleep," she murmured, stepping closer, "dreaming of the one who would claim me with true love's kiss. And now you're here." She reached up to trace the outline of his helmet. "Remove this barrier, my beloved. Let me see your true face." "I don't think that's a good idea," Dax stammered. but found himself reaching for his helmet seals anyway. Something about her presence was compelling, drawing him in despite every rational thought screaming at him to run. Torres and Morrison burst into the chamber just as Dax's helmet came free. The security officer immediately drew his weapon while Torres fumbled for her scanner, both of them staring in shock at the blue-skinned woman, who now stood mere inches from their colleague. "Nobody move," Morrison barked, training his sidearm on Salif. "Step away from Corn, lady." Nice and slow, Salif turned to regard Morrison with mild curiosity, and suddenly his weapon began to glow with an eerie golden light. The metal grew too hot to hold, and he dropped it with a curse as it clattered harmlessly to the floor. "I mean no harm to the companions of my beloved," Salif said serenely, "though I will not tolerate threats against what is mine." "What is yours?" Torres stepped forward, scanner in hand, her scientific curiosity overriding her caution. "Who are you? What are you?" "I am Salif of the House of Starfire, last empress of the Sarati people." Her voice carried the weight of ancient authority. "My people placed me in the sacred stasis to await the coming of my destined mate. This one," she gestured to Dax, "has awakened me with the ritual kiss. We are now bound by the laws of my people and the will of the cosmos itself." Dax felt something stirring in his chest, a warmth that seemed to spread outward from his heart. It wasn't unpleasant, quite the opposite, but it was definitely not normal. "Bound how?" he asked, though part of him already knew he wouldn't like the answer. Salith's smile was radiant. "Soul to soul, heart to heart, life to life. Where you go, I go. What you feel, I feel. We are two halves of one whole, now and forever." She placed her hand over his heart, and the warmth intensified. "Can you not feel it, my beloved, the connection that binds us?" He could. That was the terrifying part. Beneath the fear and confusion, there was something else, a rightness. As if a piece of himself he hadn't known was missing had suddenly clicked into place. "This is insane," Morrison muttered, picking up his cooled weapon. "Captain's not going to believe this." "The captain," Torres said suddenly, her face pale. "We need to report this, now." She activated her comm. "Captain Voss, we have a situation down here." "Define situation, Lieutenant." Torres looked at Salif, who was now running her fingers through Dax's hair with obvious delight, and then at Dax, who seemed to be in some kind of trance. "We found life, ma'am. Intelligent, apparently immortal life, and it's claimed one of our crew." The comm was silent for a long moment. "Repeat that, Lieutenant." "Dax awakened some kind of alien empress from stasis, and she says they're now bonded, permanently. I'm sending down a full team. Nobody moves until I get there." Salif laughed, the sound like silver bells. "Your captain is welcome, as are all who serve my beloved. But understand this: nothing in this universe or any other can break the bond that now exists between us. I have waited millennia for this moment." She turned to gaze at Dax with eyes full of ancient wisdom and newfound love. "I will not be parted from him again." As if to demonstrate her point, she leaned forward and kissed Dax properly this time. The moment their lips met, the chamber filled with golden light, and Dax felt the last of his resistance crumble. Whatever was happening to him, whatever this bond meant, he found he no longer cared about fighting it. When they broke apart, Salith smiled triumphantly. "There, now the bond is sealed in the sight of witnesses. No power in the galaxy can undo what has been done." Torres and Morrison exchanged worried glances as Dax stared at Salith with undisguised fascination. "We are in so much trouble," Morrison muttered. Above them, the sound of shuttle engines announced the arrival of Captain Voss and her team. But down in the ancient chamber, surrounded by the watchful eyes of carved gods, Dax found himself wondering if trouble might just be the beginning of the greatest adventure of his life. Captain Helena Voss stood in the circular chamber, her steely gaze moving between the impossible blue-skinned woman and her compromised crew member. Behind her, Chief Medical Officer Dr. James Park ran his tricorder over both Dax and Salith, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Explain this to me again," Voss said, her voice deadly calm. Slowly, Salith inclined her head gracefully. "I am honored to meet the leader of my beloved's people. I am Salith, last of the Sarati royal line. Your crew member awakened me from the sacred stasis with the ritual kiss, binding us as eternal mates according to the ancient laws. And these ancient laws, Voss continued, they're non-negotiable as gravity or the passage of time. Salith replied, the bond exists now in our very essence. To break it would mean death for us both. Dr. Park looked up from his readings. Captain, the energy signatures I'm getting are off the charts. There's definitely some kind of connection between them. Their biorhythms are synchronizing even as we speak. Dax, who had been unusually quiet since the second kiss, finally spoke. I can feel her, he said wonderingly. Her emotions, her thoughts, it's like she's becoming part of me. And you are becoming part of me, Salith said softly, moving to stand beside him. This is as it should be, my beloved. Two souls recognizing their other half. This is a nightmare, Morrison muttered, but Salith heard him. For some, perhaps, she acknowledged. But not for us. She turned to face the assembled crew. I understand your concern for your companion. Let me ease your fears by explaining what the bond truly means. She gestured, and the air around them shimmered. Suddenly, the chamber was filled with holographic images, star systems, planets, and beings of incredible beauty and power. The Serati were an ancient people, Salith began, her voice taking on the cadence of a storyteller. We ruled a vast empire across the galaxy when your species was still learning to make fire. But power without love is hollow, and our greatest minds discovered that true fulfillment came only through the sacred bond. Between destined souls, the images shifted to show elaborate ceremonies. Couples standing before crowds of the blue-skinned. Aliens, their hands joined as golden light surrounded them. Each member of the royal line was destined for one perfect mate. She continued, the bond cannot be forced or faked. It only activates when two souls truly recognize each other. I was the last of my line, and when our empire fell to plague and war, I chose to enter stasis rather than die alone and unbonded. Captain Voss stepped forward. And now you expect my crew member to abandon his life, his career, his entire species to be with you? Salith's expression grew sad. I expect nothing, Captain. I merely state what is. The bond exists whether we will it or not. But she looked at Dax with infinite tenderness. I would never force my beloved to do anything against his will. If he truly wishes to leave me, I will find a way to break the bond, even if it costs me my life. No, Dax said sharply, surprising everyone including himself. No, I don't want that. He turned to face his captain. I know how this sounds, but what I'm feeling right now, it's not just attraction or infatuation. It's like I've been walking around my whole life with a part of me missing, and now I'm finally complete. Dr. Park frowned at his readings. The neurochemical changes are remarkable. It's as if his brain is being rewired for enhanced empathy and emotional connection. But it doesn't appear to be against his will, more like it's activating dormant pathways. Salith nodded. The bond awakens what was always there, Doctor. It does not create false feelings. But what does this mean practically? Torres asked. Can you leave this place? Can you function on our ship? I can go anywhere my beloved goes. Salith replied. My powers are not tied to this place. I merely slept here because it was sacred to my people. She gestured again, and one of the fallen stones near the chamber entrance lifted smoothly into the air before settling gently back down. I can provide for myself and even assist your endeavors if you will have me. Captain Voss was quiet for a long moment, clearly weighing options. Finally, she spoke. Dr. Park, I want a full medical and psychological evaluation of both of them. Torres, I want a complete scan of this facility and any technology we can find. Morrison, set up a perimeter. We're not leaving until I understand exactly what we're dealing with. As the crew dispersed to their tasks, Salith approached Captain Voss. You are wise to be cautious, Captain, but know this: I have lived for millennia, commanded fleets, and witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations. I offer you not just my gratitude for bringing me my beloved, but my loyalty and service. What threatens him, threatens me. What threatens your crew, threatens those I now consider family. Pretty words, Voss replied, but I've heard pretty words before. You'll have to prove yourself through actions. Salith smiled. I would expect nothing less from one who commands such loyalty. From her people, as the hours passed and the crew worked, Dax found himself drawn deeper into conversation with Salith. She told him of her people's history, their achievements in art and science, their deep connection to the cosmic forces that bound the universe together. In return, he shared stories of human exploration, their struggles and triumphs among the stars. Your people are remarkable, Salith said as they sat together on the days where she had once stood as a statue. So young, yet so bold, so fragile, yet so resilient. We're survivors, Dax agreed. It's what we do best. She reached out to take his hand, and he felt that warm pulse of connection flow between them. And now you will never have to survive alone again. The simple statement hit him harder than he expected. He realized that he had been alone in ways he'd never quite acknowledged, not just romantically, but spiritually. The work, the endless missions, the surface friendships with his crewmates, none of it had ever touched the deep loneliness he'd carried inside. Salith, he said softly, what if I'm not who you think I am? What if I disappoint you? She turned to face him fully, her amber eyes serious. My beloved, I have lived long enough to know that perfection is an illusion. What I sense in you is not perfection, but completion. Your doubts, your fears, your flaws, I accept them all, because they are part of the soul that calls to mine. Before he could respond, she leaned forward and kissed him again. This time, the golden light that surrounded them was softer, warmer, and Dax felt something shift inside him, not just the mystical bond, but his own heart opening in ways he'd never allowed before. When they parted, both were breathing hard. The bond grows stronger. Salith whispered against his lips, soon, we will be as one mind and two bodies. Is that what you want? He asked. Is what we both want, she replied. I can feel your desire, just as you can feel mine. And she was right. Beneath all his confusion and fear, there was a growing certainty that this woman, this impossible, beautiful, powerful woman, was exactly what his life had been missing. The question now was whether he was brave enough to embrace a destiny that would change everything he thought he knew about himself. 3 days had passed since Salith's awakening, and the Meridian had become a ship divided. Half the crew viewed the alien empress with suspicion and fear, while the other half had begun to warm to her obvious intelligence and genuine desire to help. Captain Voss remained carefully neutral, though Dax noticed she'd taken to seeking Salith's advice on matters of alien technology and culture. Dax himself was transforming in ways he couldn't have imagined. The bond with Salith had deepened with each passing hour, bringing with it abilities he was still learning to control. He could sense the emotions of everyone around him, feel the ebb and flow of life energy throughout the ship, and most remarkably, share thoughts and sensations directly with Salith. The neural integration is accelerating, Dr. Park reported to Captain Voss in the medical bay, where Dax submitted to daily scans. His brain activity shows patterns I've never seen in humans. It's as if he's accessing parts of his consciousness that were previously dormant. And the risks, Voss asked, unknown. But his physical health is actually improving. Enhanced reflexes, increased strength, better coordination. Whatever this bond is doing to him, it's not harming him physically. That evening, Dax found Salith in the observation lounge, standing before the massive viewport as stars wheeled past. She'd adapted quickly to shipboard life, and the crew had provided her with modern clothing that suited her regal bearing, a form-fitting jumpsuit in deep blue that complemented her skin tone. You're troubled, she said without turning around, their bond allowing her to sense his approach and his mood. The crew is getting restless, Dax admitted, joining her at the viewport. Some of them think you're dangerous, that you've compromised me somehow. Salith sighed. Perhaps they're not wrong. I have changed you, my beloved, just as you have changed me. The question is whether you regret that change. Dax studied her profile in the starlight. Over the past few days, he'd learned so much about her loneliness during the long centuries before her people's fall, her grief at losing everything she'd once ruled, her hope that somewhere in the vast universe she might find her destined mate. But he'd also discovered her incredible compassion, her wisdom, and her fierce loyalty to those she cared about. I don't regret it, he said quietly. But I'm scared. Of what? Of losing myself completely. Of becoming so wrapped up in this bond that I forget who I was before. Salith turned to face him, her amber eyes soft with understanding. Show me, she said, reaching up to cup his face in her hands. Show me who you were, and let me show you who we can become together. The moment their minds fully opened to each other, the observation lounge faded away. Instead, they stood in a space that existed somewhere between thought and reality, surrounded by the swirling memories and dreams that made up their deepest selves. Dax shared his childhood on Earth's industrial colonies, his love of machines, and the satisfaction of making broken things work again. He showed her his dreams of exploring the unknown regions of space, his frustration with the mundane reality of survey missions, his secret fear that he'd never find his purpose in life. In return, Salith opened her memories to him, the glory days of the Serati Empire, when science and art flourished under her guidance. He felt her joy in discovery, her sorrow at the plague that devastated her people, her determination to preserve their knowledge for future generations, and beneath it all, her aching loneliness and the hope that kept her going through millennia of waiting. You see, she whispered as their mental embrace deepened, we are not so different, two souls seeking meaning, seeking connection, seeking love. But you're an empress, Dax protested. You've ruled star systems, commanded fleets. I'm just an engineer. Salith laughed, the sound echoing strangely in their shared mindspace. And what is an empress without someone to build the ships that carry her people to the stars? What is a ruler without someone who understands how to make the machinery of civilization function? She drew him closer. You think too little of yourself, my beloved. I see your worth even if you do not. Their lips met in the space between dreams, and the kiss sent shockwaves through both their consciousness. But this time, instead of just feeling the golden warmth of their bond, Dax experienced something far more intense, a complete merging of their souls that left him gasping. When they returned to normal awareness, they were no longer standing at the viewport. Instead, they were lying entwined on the soft carpet of the observation lounge. Salith's red curls spread like silk across his chest as she traced patterns on his skin with her fingertips. How did we, Dax began, then realized he didn't care. The rightness of holding her, of feeling her heartbeat against his, was overwhelming. The bond reaches its full strength, Salith murmured, pressing soft kisses along his collarbone. We are becoming what we were always meant to be, the parts of one perfect whole. Their lovemaking was unlike anything Dax had ever experienced. Every touch was amplified through their mental connection, every sensation shared and doubled. Salith's alien heritage showed in the way her skin seemed to glow with inner light when aroused, the way her hair shifted color from deep red to burnished gold, the musical quality of her voice as she whispered his name. But more than the physical connection was the emotional intimacy, the complete vulnerability of sharing not just their bodies, but their very souls. Dax felt Salith's wonder at finally experiencing the love she'd waited millennia to find, just as she felt his amazement at discovering depths of passion he'd never known he possessed. Afterward, as they lay wrapped in each other's arms, Salith spoke softly. There is something you must know, my beloved. My awakening has not gone unnoticed by others. Dax propped himself up on one elbow. What do you mean? The Serati had enemies, the Keftar, a warrior race that coveted our technology and knowledge. They were thought extinct, but, she sighed, I sense them stirring in the dark spaces between stars. My return to wakefulness has sent ripples through the cosmic web that bind all living things. They will come for me, and for the secrets I carry. Then we'll be ready for them, Dax said with a confidence that surprised him. Salith smiled. Did you think I'd let you face your enemies alone? I may just be an engineer, but I'm your engineer now, and I have a whole crew of humans who've gotten pretty good at handling impossible situations. The others will not wish to risk their lives for me. Then they don't know you like I do. Dax replied, give them time. They'll see what I see. As if summoned by his words, the calm system crackled to life. All senior staff to the bridge immediately, came Captain Voss's tense voice. We have incoming ships, and they're not responding to hails. Salith's face went pale. It has begun, she whispered. but as they quickly dressed and prepared to face whatever was coming, Dax felt no fear, only a fierce determination to protect the woman who had become his other half, and the growing certainty that this was the adventure he'd been searching for his entire life. The bridge of the Meridian was a storm of controlled chaos. As the crew tracked the approaching vessels, 3 sleek, predatory ships had dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, their dark hulls bristling with weapons that registered as far beyond human technology. Keftar battle cruisers, Salith confirmed grimly as she and Dax arrived on the bridge. They've been hunting Serati survivors for millennia. Captain Voss turned from her command chair. Can we outrun them? Not in this ship, Salith replied. But we need not run. With your permission, Captain. I can handle this threat. Absolutely not, Voss snapped. I won't risk my ship or crew in some ancient alien war. Before Salith could respond, the main viewer flickered to life, revealing the bridge of the lead Keftar vessel. The being that appeared was humanoid, but reptilian, with scaled green skin and eyes like burning coals. When it spoke, its voice was a harsh rasp that made the translator's system strain. Surrender the Serati pretender, and we will allow your pathetic vessel to depart unharmed. The alien commander demanded. Refuse, and we will take her from your corpses. Counteroffer. Captain Voss said coldly. Turn around and leave, or we'll show you what this pathetic vessel can do. The Keftar commander laughed, a sound like grinding stone. Your weapons are toys compared to ours, human. You have 1 minute to decide. The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Captain, Chief Morrison said quietly, our shields won't last 10 seconds against those weapons. Dax felt Salith's tension through their bond, her ancient memories of Keftar brutality and her determination not to let innocents suffer for her sake. But he also felt something else, her power, vast and barely contained, waiting to be unleashed. There is another way, Salith said softly, but it requires trust. Captain Voss studied her for a long moment. What kind of trust? Allow me to merge temporarily with your ship's systems. My people's technology was far advanced. I can enhance your shields, your weapons, your engines, but the process requires a conduit. She looked at Dax. Someone bonded to me who can serve as a bridge between Serati and human technology. Absolutely not, Dr. Park protested. We don't know what that kind of neural interface could do to Dax. I'll do it, Dax said without hesitation. Dax, Torres began, but he cut her off. These are our people, he said, gesturing to the crew around them. This is our ship. Salith is part of that now, and so am I. He looked at Captain Voss. Give us a chance. The enemy ships were moving closer, their weapons charging with ominous energy. Do it, Voss commanded. Salith moved to the main engineering console, placing her hands on the interface. My beloved, join with me. Dax stepped behind her, placing his hands over hers on the console. The moment they made contact, golden light flowed through the bridge systems, and he felt his consciousness expand beyond his body. Suddenly, he was the ship, feeling the pulse of the engines, the flow of power through the corridors, the nervous heartbeats of every crew member. But more than that, he was connected to Salith's vast knowledge, centuries of Serati technological mastery flowing through their bond. Incredible. He breathed as new understanding flooded his mind. I can see how to modify everything: shields, weapons, propulsion. It's all connected, all part of one integrated system. On the view screen, the Keftar ships opened fire, their weapons painting space with deadly energy. But the beams that should have shattered the Meridian's hull instead splashed harmlessly against shields that now glowed with the same golden light that surrounded Salith and Dax. Return fire, Captain Voss ordered. The Meridian's weapons, enhanced by Serati technology, lanced out with devastating precision. One of the enemy ships staggered under the impact, its shields failing in a cascade of sparks. Impossible, the Keftar commander snarled as his image reappeared on screen. No human vessel could. His eyes widened as he spotted Salith. The last empress, you still live. I live, Vox, Salith replied, her voice carrying the authority of ancient royalty. And I am no longer alone. These humans are under my protection, as I am under theirs. Your protection means nothing, Serati witch, we destroyed your empire once. We will finish what we started. The remaining Keftar ships attacked with renewed fury, but now the Meridian danced between their weapons like a ship half its size, while returning fire that carved through their hulls with surgical precision. Through his connection to Tsalith and the ship, Dax felt the moment when the tide turned. The enemy commander's confidence cracked as he realized his supposedly superior vessels were being systematically dismantled by a human survey ship. Enough, Tsalith said, her voice echoing with power. She raised one hand, and space around the Keftar ships began to distort. You have threatened those I love. Face the consequence. The remaining enemy vessels found themselves trapped in a web of twisted spacetime. Their weapons useless, their engines dead. It was a display of power that left the Meridian's crew staring in awe. Choose, Tsalith commanded. Withdraw and never return, or be destroyed here and now. The Keftar commander looked around his disabled bridge, then back at the view screen, where Tsalith stood wreathed in golden light, no longer hiding the full extent of her abilities. This is not over, last empress, he rasped. Others will come. Let them, Tsalith replied calmly. They will find me ready, and no longer alone. The Keftar ships limped away into hyperspace, leaving the Meridian alone among the stars. As the immediate danger passed, Tsalith and Dax slowly disconnected from the ship's systems, both of them swaying with exhaustion. Well, Captain Voss said after a moment of stunned silence, I think we can officially say this mission has exceeded its original parameters. 3 months later, the Meridian hung in orbit around New Geneva, humanity's most advanced colony world. But this was no ordinary visit. They had come for a wedding. The ceremony took place in the grand amphitheater of the colonial capital, with representatives from a dozen human worlds in attendance. But the guest list also included delegations from 3 alien species who had heard the story of the human engineer and the Serati empress and wished to honor their union. Tsalith wore a gown that seemed to be woven from starlight itself, her red hair crowned with a circlet of precious metals that had once belonged to her people's royal treasury. Dax stood beside her in dress uniform, looking more confident and happy than his former crewmates had ever seen him. Captain Voss performed the ceremony, having been granted special authority by the Colonial Council, as she spoke the words that would bind them legally as well as spiritually. Golden light began to gather round the couple. By the authority vested in me by the United Colonies of Earth, and witnessed by the assembled representatives of the galactic community, Voss intoned, I now pronounce you husband and wife, bondmates for life and beyond. The kiss that followed sent waves of golden energy through the amphitheater, visible proof of the cosmic forces that had brought them together. When they parted, both Tsalith and Dax were glowing with inner light, their bond now complete and unbreakable. My beloved, Tsalith whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear, you have given me not just love, but a new people to call family, a new purpose to embrace. I pledge my life, my power, and my heart to you and to humanity, and I pledge mine. To you, Dax replied, his voice strong and sure. Whatever challenges we face, whatever adventures await us, we'll face them together. As the ceremony concluded and the celebration began, Captain Voss found herself standing with Dr. Park and the other former crew of the Meridian, watching the happy couple accept congratulations from beings across the galaxy. Think they'll be happy? Park asked. Look at them, Voss replied with a rare smile. Have you ever seen two people more perfectly matched? Indeed, as Tsalith and Dax moved through the crowd, they seemed to share a single consciousness, finishing each other's sentences, moving in perfect synchronization, radiating a contentment that was almost tangible. Later that evening, as the newly married couple stood alone on a balcony overlooking the colonial city, Tsalith turned to her husband with a mysterious smile. What are you thinking about? Dax asked, feeling her excitement through their bond. Our future, she replied. The places we'll go, the things we'll discover together. The Serati had many colonies, many hidden treasures scattered across the galaxy. And there are other species out there, other worlds that could benefit from the alliance between our peoples. Dax grinned. Sounds like adventure. The greatest adventure of all, Tsalith agreed, pulling him close. A lifetime of exploring the universe with the other half of my soul. As they kissed under the alien stars, both knew that their story was just beginning. What had started with a joke and an impulsive kiss had become something greater than either had dreamed possible. Love that would reshape the galaxy, one adventure at a time. And in the depths of space, other ancient powers stirred, drawn by the cosmic resonance of a bond that had awakened forces dormant for millennia. The universe itself seemed to be holding its breath, waiting to see what the engineer and his empress would accomplish together. But that, as they say, is another story.